Hey, ladies, ever wonder what happens when a rich prick and a tough-as-nails gal get tangled up in a fake marriage that turns real laughs? I'm Mr. Joan Doe, your 58-year-old storyteller from this sleepy New York town, sipping whiskey and spinning yarns for you fine folks. Picture me on my porch, creaky chair and all, dishing dirt like we're sneaking a chat at the diner. Tonight's tale's got it all: heartbreak, heat, and a whole lot of cussin'. Just how we like it. You gals know I'm a sucker for love stories that kick you in the gut. So grab your wine, settle in, and let's get messy. Drop a comment. Tell me your wildest love story, and hit that subscribe button so we can keep this gossip train rolling. Ready? Here we go. The moonlight sliced through the window of the Wyoming cabin like a blade, carving shadows across the polished wood floor. The air was thick with the scent of pine and something sweeter, like vanilla clinging to skin. A low fire crackled in the hearth, spitting embers that danced like fireflies before fading into ash. Sam Ward, 45, stood in the center of the room, his tailored vest unbuttoned, tie yanked loose like he'd given up on pretense. His hands, rougher than you'd expect from a millionaire, gripped the waist of Nahili Jackson, pulling her close enough that their breaths tangled. Nahili, 28, wasn't the kind of woman you'd see on a magazine cover. Her body was full, curves spilling over the edges of a cotton dress that clung to her in the heat. A scar ran jagged across her left calf, and her walk carried a limp from an old injury. But right now, she moved with a fire that made Sam's pulse hammer. Her dark eyes locked on his, fierce, almost daring him to cross a line. "Don't screw this up, Sam," she whispered, voice low and raw, "or I'll make you regret it." He didn't answer with words. His lips crashed into hers, hungry, like he'd been starving for this and didn't know it until now. The kiss was deep, slow, the kind that made time blur. Her hands slid up his chest, fingers curling into his shirt, pulling him closer. The firelight painted her skin in shades of amber, catching the sweat beading along her collarbone. His hand traced the curve of her hip, feeling the warmth through the thin fabric, the pulse of her body syncing with his. The room seemed to shrink, the world reduced to the sound of their breaths, the creak of the floor under their weight, the faint howl of wind outside. She pulled back just enough to breathe, her lips hovering an inch from his, eyes searching his face like she was looking for a lie. "This wasn't supposed to happen," she said, voice trembling but not weak. Sam's grip tightened, not letting her slip away. "Then why the hell are you still here?" She didn't answer. And for a moment, they just stood there, caught in the gravity of something neither could name. Then she pushed him away, hard enough to make him stumble, and turned toward the window, her silhouette sharp against the moonlight. The fire crackled, louder now, like it was laughing at them both. 3 weeks earlier, Dusty Creek, Wyoming, wasn't the kind of place you'd expect to find a millionaire like Sam Ward. The town was a speck on the map, all cracked sidewalks and faded storefronts, surrounded by endless prairie that stretched toward the Rockies. But Sam had made his fortune buying up land here, turning it into luxury resorts for rich folks who wanted to play cowboy without getting their boots dirty. At 45, he was the kind of man who walked into a room and owned it tall, broad-shouldered, with a jawline that still turned heads and a smirk that said he knew it. But behind the charm was a hollowed-out man, carved up by grief. 3 years ago, his wife, Marjorie. And their daughter, Ellie, died in a car crash on Highway 89. Since then, Sam had buried himself in work, booze, and silence. His company, Ward Properties, was teetering on the edge of a shitstorm. A lawsuit claimed one of his resorts had poisoned a local river, and the headlines were brutal: "Millionaire destroys Wyoming wilderness." His PR team was screaming for a fix, something to make him look human again. Their solution: a wife, a wholesome all-American love story to plaster across the news. Sam thought it was bullshit, but he was desperate. That's where Nahili Jackson came in. Nahili worked the morning shift at Dusty Brew, the town's only coffee shop, a cramped joint with peeling paint and a jukebox that only played Johnny Cash. She was 28, black, and carried the kind of weight that made people whisper she could stand to lose a few when she walked by. Her left leg dragged slightly, a limp from a car accident when she was a kid that left her with a mangled calf and a titanium rod in her shin. Her face wasn't what you'd call pretty, too round, too plain, with a nose that didn't quite fit the beauty standards of Dusty Creek. But her eyes, dark and sharp, could cut through you like a knife. And her hands moved with a grace that came from years of playing the violin. Nahili was drowning in her own way. Her mom, Clara, had died of heart failure 2 years back, leaving behind a stack of medical bills that ate up every dime Nahili made. She'd dreamed of being a musician, maybe even moving to Nashville. But those dreams were buried under debt and the reality of scraping by in a town that didn't give a damn about her. The violin she played was her mom's, a beat-up old thing she hauled out at night, filling her tiny apartment with notes that sounded like grief and hope twisted together. Sam found her through Miss Lahi, the coffee shop's owner, a wiry woman in her 60s with a mouth as sharp as her coffee. Lahi knew everyone's business in Dusty Creek, and when Sam came sniffing around for a temporary wife, she pointed him to Nahili not because she thought it was a good idea, but because she knew Nahili needed the money. The meeting happened after closing, the shop empty except for the hum of the neon open sign flickering green against the window. Nahili leaned on her cane, a cheap aluminum thing that creaked under her weight, and stared at Sam like he was a snake oil salesman. He sat across from her, legs crossed, looking too damn comfortable in his $1,000 suit. The air smelled of burnt espresso and bleach, and the only sound was the faint drip of a leaky faucet. "Here's the deal," Sam said, sliding a contract across the table. 1 year, you play my wife, smile for the cameras, go to a few events. I pay off your mom's debts every cent and set you up with a music studio. Cash up front, no strings after the year's up. Nahili didn't touch the contract. Her eyes flicked from the paper to his face, reading him like a book she already knew the ending to. "You're a smug bastard. You know that," she said, voice low but steady. "You think you can just buy me." Sam leaned back, unfazed. "I'm not buying you. I'm offering a trade. You get your life back. I get mine. Win-win." "Win-win," she laughed, sharp and bitter. "You're buying my goddamn dignity, Sam. Don't dress it up like charity." He shrugged, but his jaw tightened. "Call it what you want. You're drowning in debt, and I'm throwing you a rope. Take it or don't." Nahili's hand twitched toward her cane, like she was fighting the urge to smack him with it. She hated him, hated his arrogance, his money, the way he looked at her like she was a problem to solve. But the numbers on that contract stared back at her: $200,000 in medical bills. Gone. A studio. Hers. a chance to breathe again. She thought of her mom, how she'd fought to keep Nahili's violin out of the pawn shop even when they couldn't afford food. "Fine," she said finally, grabbing the pen. "But don't expect me to kiss your ass or play house like some Stepford wife. I'm doing this for me, not you." Sam smirked, but there was a flicker of something else in his eyes, respect. Maybe. Or just surprise. Deal. Nahili moved into Sam's cabin the next day, a sprawling cedar and glass monstrosity on the edge of Dusty Creek, surrounded by prairie that glowed gold at sunset. The place was all clean lines and leather furniture, like something out of a magazine, but it felt cold, like a tomb. Sam's life was everywhere, photos of Marjorie and Ellie on the mantel, a half-empty whiskey bottle on the counter, but it was a life frozen in time, untouched by warmth. Nahili's room was down the hall, a guest suite with a view of the mountains. She unpacked her violin and a few clothes, her cane propped against the bed. The first night, she stood on the porch, the wind tugging at her hair, and looked out at the endless grassland. It was beautiful, but it felt like a cage. She'd traded one prison for another, and Sam Ward was the warden. Sam kept his distance, treating her like a business partner. He gave her a credit card, a new phone, and a schedule of events she'd need to attend as Mrs. Ward. Their conversations were short, clipped, all business. "Wear something nice for the gala next week," he'd say. Or, "Don't talk to the press unless I say so." Nahili bit her tongue, but every order made her want to scream. The town noticed her. Of course, Dusty Creek wasn't big, maybe 2,000 people, mostly white, mostly set in their ways. Nahili felt their eyes when she walked into the grocery store, heard their whispers when she passed the barber shop. "What's a girl like her doing with Sam Ward?" one woman muttered. "Loud enough to carry. Must be the money." Nahili gripped her cane tighter, her knuckles whitening, but she didn't turn around. She'd learned long ago that fighting back only made the whispers louder. Miss Lahi was the only one who didn't judge. At the coffee shop, she'd slide Nahili a free latte and say, "You're tougher than you look. Girl, don't let that rich prick walk all over you." Nahili would smile, but inside, she wasn't so sure. Sam was a wall cold, unyielding, and impossible to read. She didn't trust him, didn't like him, didn't want to be anywhere near him. But then there were moments, small ones, that threw her off. Like when she caught him staring at her while she polished her violin. His eyes lingering not with judgment, but with something softer, like curiosity. Or when he left a plate of takeout pizza on the counter with a note, "Eat something." It wasn't kindness, not exactly, but it was enough to make her wonder what was under all that arrogance. The gala was a week away, and Nahili was already dreading it. She stood in her room, trying on a dress Sam had sent, a sleek black thing that hugged her curves in a way that made her feel exposed. The mirror was unforgiving, showing every roll, every scar, every reason she'd spent years hiding. She hated it, hated him for making her play this part. She stepped onto the porch, needing air, needing space. The prairie stretched out before her, vast and quiet, the stars sharp against the night sky. Her cane sank into the soft earth, and she leaned on it, closing her eyes. For a moment, she could almost hear her mom's voice, singing an old hymn, telling her to keep going. Sam's voice broke the silence. "You planning to run off already?" She turned, startled. He stood in the doorway, a beer in one hand, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar. The porch light caught the lines on his face, the grief etched there despite his smirk. "Not yet," Nahili said, her voice steady. "But don't tempt me." He chuckled, low and rough, and took a step closer. "You're not what I expected. You know that." She raised an eyebrow. "What? You thought I'd be some grateful little charity case? Kissing your boots? Maybe." He took a swig of his beer, eyes never leaving hers. "But you're different. Got some fire in you." Nahili's chest tightened. She didn't want his compliments, didn't want anything from him. But the way he looked at her, like he was seeing her for the first time, made her skin prickle. "Save it." "Ward," she said, turning back to the prairie. "I'm here for the money, not your charm." He didn't reply, but she felt him watching her, the weight of his gaze like a hand on her shoulder. The wind howled, carrying the scent of sage and earth. And for a moment, they stood there, two strangers bound by a contract and something neither could name. Whoa. Sam and Nahili are already stirring up trouble. Want to see where this fire takes them? Smash that subscribe button and drop a comment. What's Nahili gonna do at that gala? Stick around to find out. The gala was a glittering cage, all crystal chandeliers and fake smiles, held in the ballroom of Dusty Creek's only fancy hotel, a relic from the town's brief gold rush days. The air smelled of expensive perfume and overcooked steak, and the hum of polite chatter mixed with the clink of champagne glasses. Nahili Jackson stood at the edge of the room, her black dress hugging her curves in a way that felt like a betrayal. The fabric was smooth, too smooth, like it was mocking every scar and roll she'd spent years hiding. Her cane, polished aluminum, gleamed under the lights, but it didn't make her feel any less like an imposter. Sam Ward, in a tailored tux that probably cost more than her mom's old car, worked the room like a pro. He shook hands, flashed that $1,000,000 smirk, and tossed out charming one-liners to investors and local bigwigs. Nahili was supposed to be his arm candy, the wholesome wife to sell his redemption story. But every time he glanced her way, she felt like a prop in his goddamn play. "Smile, Nahili," he'd whispered before they walked in, his breath warm against her ear. These people eat that shit up. She'd shot him a look that could have melted steel. "I'm not your fucking puppet, Sam." He'd chuckled, low and infuriating, but didn't push it. Now, as she stood by a table of overpriced appetizers, she gripped her cane tighter, trying to ignore the stares. They weren't subtle. A woman in a sequined gown whispered to her friend, loud enough to carry, "She's his charity case. Isn't she, poor thing?" The friend nodded, her diamond earrings catching the light. Must be the money. No way Sam Ward's that desperate. Nahili's stomach twisted, but she forced herself to stand taller, her jaw set. She'd heard worse hell. She'd grown up with kids calling her limpy and fat ass in the schoolyard. But this was different. These people didn't just judge her, they erased her, like she was nothing but a punchline in Sam's story. She grabbed a glass of champagne, more to have something to do with her hands than because she wanted it, and took a sip. It tasted like regret. Sam appeared at her side, his presence like a storm cloud heavy, unavoidable. "You're doing fine," he said, voice low, like he was coaching a kid at a spelling bee. "Just keep your head up." "Fuck you," she muttered, not looking at him. "I'm not here for your pep talk." His eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, A man in a cowboy hat some rancher with too much money and not enough sense stumbled over, reeking of whiskey. Well, damn. Sam. He slurred, eyeing Nahili like she was a sideshow act. Did you pick this one up from a shelter or what? The room didn't go silent, but it felt like it. Nahili's grip on her cane tightened until her knuckles ached. Sam stiffened, his hand twitching like he wanted to throw a punch. But Nahili spoke first, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Keep staring, cowboy. It's free. But you're still getting ripped off. The rancher blinked, caught off guard, then laughed a forced, nervous sound. The crowd around them shifted, some smirking, others looking away. Sam's lips twitched, almost a smile. But Nahili didn't care. She turned and walked out, her cane tapping the floor with every uneven step. The weight of 100 eyes burning into her back. Outside, the night was cold, the kind of Wyoming cold that bit through your skin and settled in your bones. Streetlights cast pools of yellow on the sidewalk, their hum the only sound besides the faint music leaking from the ballroom. Nahili leaned against a brick wall, her breath clouding in the air, her dress doing jack shit to keep her warm. She closed her eyes, trying to block out the voices in her head, the ranchers, the whispering women's, her own, telling her she didn't belong here, never would. Footsteps crunched on the gravel, and she knew it was Sam before he spoke. What the hell was that? His voice was rough, not angry, but close. You can't just walk out like that. You're supposed to be my wife. She opened her eyes, glaring at him. He stood a few feet away, tie loosened, his face half lit by the streetlight. Your wife, she snapped. I'm your goddamn employee. Sam, wake up. I don't owe you shit. He stepped closer, his boots scuffing the pavement. You think I wanted this? You think I like parading you around like some trophy I'm trying to save my company? Nahili, this is the game. Then find someone else to play it. Her voice cracked, louder than she meant, echoing off the empty street. I'm not your prop, your charity case, or your fucking savior. You picked me because I'm desperate, not because I'm special. Sam's jaw clenched, his eyes darkening. That's not true. Bullshit. She pushed off the wall, stepping toward him, her cane digging into the ground. You looked at me and saw a problem you could fix with a check. Don't act like you give a damn about who I am. He didn't back down, closing the distance until they were inches apart. The streetlight caught the stubble on his jaw, the faint scar above his eyebrow. You don't know what I see, he said, voice low, almost dangerous. You don't know a goddamn thing. Then tell me, she shouted, her chest heaving. What do you see? Sam, a fat, crippled black girl who's only good for your PR stunt? Or do you just like screwing with me because you can? For a second, he didn't move, didn't speak. Then his hand shot out, grabbing her shoulders, pulling her against him. Before she could react, his lips were on hers, hard and desperate, like he was trying to prove something. The kiss wasn't gentle, it was raw, messy, full of everything they hadn't said. Nahili froze, her cane clattering to the ground, then pushed back, her hands fisting in his jacket. The world narrowed to the taste of whiskey on his tongue, the rough scrape of his stubble, the cold air stinging her cheeks. Leaves rustled in the wind. their shadows dancing on the pavement like ghosts. She yanked away, breathing hard, her eyes blazing. What the hell was that? Sam looked as stunned as she felt, his hands still hovering where her shoulders had been. I don't know, he admitted, voice rough. But you're not just a stunt. Nahili, not to me. She laughed, sharp and bitter, stepping back. You're full of shit. She grabbed her cane, her fingers trembling, and started walking. The tap of metal on concrete loud in the silence. She didn't look back, but she felt his eyes on her, heavy as the night itself. Back at the cabin, Nahili locked herself in her room, her heart still pounding. She stood in front of the mirror, the dress mocking her again, and ripped it off, letting it pool on the floor. Her reflection stared back scars, stretch marks, a body she'd spent years hating. She touched the scar on her calf, the one from the accident that took her mom's savings and her childhood dreams. She'd learned to live with it, learned to ignore the stares. But tonight, those stares had cut deeper than ever. She sank onto the bed, her violin case open beside her. Her fingers brushed the worn wood, the only thing that still felt like home. She didn't play, not tonight. She just held it, like it could anchor her against the storm in her chest. Sam's kiss kept replaying in her head the heat, the anger, the way it felt like he meant it. But she didn't trust it, didn't trust him. He was a man who bought solutions, and she was just another deal. Downstairs, Sam stood by the fireplace, a whiskey glass in his hand, the amber liquid catching the light. He hadn't changed out of his tux, but the tie was gone, tossed somewhere in his frustration. He'd fucked up. He knew it. Kissing her was a mistake, but it hadn't felt like one, not when her lips were on his, not when she'd pushed back like she wanted it to. He didn't know what he was doing anymore. Nahili wasn't part of the plan. She was supposed to be a means to an end, a way to save his company. But the way she'd stood up to that drunk asshole, the way her eyes burned when she called him out, she was more than he'd bargained for. He drained the glass, the burn in his throat doing nothing to quiet the noise in his head. Marjorie's photo watched him from the mantel, her smile soft and accusing. He turned away, unable to face it. The next morning, Nahili was in the kitchen when Sam came down, her cane leaning against the counter. She was making coffee, the machine hissing like it was pissed off too. Her hair was pulled back, her face bare, and she wore an old flannel shirt that made her look more like herself than that damn dress. "We need to talk," Sam said, his voice rough from lack of sleep. She didn't look at him, just poured coffee into a mug. "About what?" "Your brilliant idea to make me look like a fool in front of your rich friends, about last night." He stepped closer, the floor creaking under his boots. "I shouldn't have. I didn't mean to kiss me." She turned, her eyes sharp. "Or make me feel like I'm nothing, because you're batting 1,000 on both." He winced, running a hand through his hair. "I'm not good at this. Okay, I'm trying to keep my head above water, same as you. That guy was an asshole, and I should have shut him down sooner." "Yeah, you should have." She set the mug down, hard enough to slosh coffee over the rim. "But you didn't. You let them stare, let them talk, because it's all part of your game. I'm done playing. Sam." She started to walk past him, but he grabbed her arm not hard, just enough to stop her. "Don't," he said, voice low. "Don't walk away. I see you, Nahili. I see more than you think." She pulled free, her eyes searching his face, looking for the lie. She didn't find one, but that didn't mean she trusted him. "Then prove it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Because words don't mean shit. Later that day, Nahili got a text from Ava, her best friend, a tattoo artist with a laugh that could fill a room. "Heard you're playing house with the rich guy. Spill the tea." Nahili smiled despite herself, but the weight of the gala still clung to her. She needed something to hold on to, something real. Ava had been pushing her to play her violin at the town's community fair, a small event with local bands and food trucks. Nahili had always said no too many eyes, too much judgment, but now she wasn't so sure. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. She found Sam in the living room, scrolling through emails on his phone. "I'm playing at the fair," she said. No preamble. "Violin. You don't get a say. But I'm telling you anyway." He looked up, surprised. "The fair? That's good. You need a ride." She raised an eyebrow. "I need you to stay out of my way. And don't expect me to smile for your investors while I'm at it." He chuckled, leaning back. "Fair enough. But you're gonna need to show up at a press conference next week. Part of the deal." She glared, but nodded. "Fine. But you owe me." Ward. As she walked away, her cane tapping the floor, Sam watched her go, a knot in his chest he couldn't name. She was fire, and he was starting to realize he didn't mind getting burned. The community fair in Dusty Creek was the kind of thing you'd see on a postcard, strings of Edison bulbs swaying between food trucks, the smell of grilled corn and cotton candy thick in the air, kids screaming on a rickety Ferris wheel that looked like it might collapse any second. The prairie stretched out beyond the fairgrounds, glowing amber under a sunset that bled pink and gold. Nahili Jackson stood backstage at the makeshift music tent, her violin case clutched like a lifeline. Her flannel shirt was loose, comfortable, nothing like that damn gala dress. But her stomach still churned. She hadn't played for a crowd since high school. And back then, the kids had snickered at her limp, not her music. She adjusted her grip on her cane, the aluminum cool against her palm, and took a deep breath. The tent was packed maybe 100 people, locals mostly, sipping beers and fanning themselves with paper programs. She spotted Ava in the front row, her friend's neon pink hair glowing under the lights, a grin splitting her face. Ava had been the one to push her into this, texting her nonstop, "Get your ass out there, girl. Show 'em what you got." Nahili wasn't sure she had anything to show, but she was done hiding. Sam Ward was there too, leaning against a pole at the back, arms crossed, his Stetson tipped low. He hadn't said much since the gala, since that kiss under the streetlight that still burned in her memory, the heat of his lips, the way his hands had felt like they were claiming her. She'd told him to prove he saw her, and so far, he'd kept his distance, like he was afraid of screwing it up again. But his eyes followed her now, steady, not with the arrogance she'd come to expect, but with something quieter, like he was waiting for her to surprise him. The MC, a guy with a handlebar mustache and too much enthusiasm, called her name, Nahili Jackson. Folks, let's give her a warm, Dusty Creek welcome. The crowd clapped, polite but not exactly thrilled. Nahili's heart hammered as she stepped onto the stage, her cane tapping the wooden platform. The spotlight hit her like a slap, hot and blinding, and for a second, she froze. The weight of all those eyes pressing down. She could hear the whispers already. Who's that? Sam Ward's fake wife. What's with the cane? She pushed it all away, opened her violin case, and lifted the instrument to her chin. The wood was warm, worn smooth by her mom's hands and her own. She closed her eyes, and the first note came, low and trembling, like a breath held too long. It was a song her mom used to hum, a gospel melody mixed with something older, something that felt like the prairie itself whined and dust and stubborn hope. The notes built, weaving a story of loss and survival, her bow moving faster, the sound rising until it filled the tent, spilling out into the night. The crowd went quiet, not out of boredom, but awe. Nahili didn't see it. She was lost in the music, her body swaying despite the ache in her leg, her fingers dancing over the strings. The violin sang of her mom's laughter, her own childhood dreams, the weight of debt and judgment that had tried to break her. When the final note faded, lingering like a ghost, the tent erupted in applause, louder than she'd expected, raw and real. She opened her eyes, blinking against the spotlight, and saw Ava on her feet, whistling like a maniac. The crowd followed, clapping, some shouting her name. Nahili's chest tightened, not with fear, but with something new pride. Maybe, or just the feeling of being seen. She glanced at Sam, still at the back, his face half-shadowed under his hat. He wasn't clapping, but his eyes were locked on her, and the look in them made her skin prickle. It wasn't pity or surprise. It was respect. Off to the set. Nahili slipped behind the tent, needing air. The night was cool, the grass damp under her boots, and the distant hum of the fair felt like a heartbeat. She leaned her cane against a crate and rubbed her leg, the scar throbbing from standing too long. Her violin was back in its case, but the music still echoed in her head, grounding her. Sam found her, his boots crunching on the gravel. That was. He paused, like he was searching for a word that wouldn't sound like bullshit. That was something else. Nahili. She looked at him, wary. He'd ditched the Stetson. His hair mussed, and the top button of his shirt was undone, showing a sliver of collarbone. "Don't patronize me," she said, but her voice lacked the usual bite. "I didn't do it for you." "I know." He stepped closer, the Edison bulbs overhead casting a warm glow across his face. "But I'm glad I saw it. You're not just fire, you're a goddamn inferno." She snorted, but a smile tugged at her lips. "Smooth talker. Bet you say that to all your fake wives. Only the ones who make me feel like an idiot." He grinned, but it faded fast, replaced by something softer. "I mean it. Nahili, you're more than I thought." Her throat tightened, and she looked away, out at the prairie where the horizon swallowed the last of the sunset. She wanted to believe him, but trust wasn't something she gave easily, not to a man like Sam, who'd built his life on control. "Words are cheap," she said quietly. "You want to prove it? Start listening." He nodded, like he was taking it in. "Fair enough. How about a beer? There's a bar across the lot." No gala, no investors, just us. She hesitated, her instincts screaming to keep her walls up. But the music had left her raw, open, and the idea of sitting with him, talking like people instead of pawns, didn't sound half bad. "1 beer," she said, grabbing her cane. "And you're paying." The bar was a dive, all sticky tables and neon signs, the kind of place where the jukebox only played Merle Haggard and the bartender didn't bother with ID. The air smelled of fried onions and cheap whiskey, and a slow country ballad crackled through the speakers. Nahili and Sam sat in a corner booth, her cane propped against the wall, a pitcher of beer between them. The neon glow from a Budweiser sign bathed the table in red, making Sam's eyes look darker, deeper. They talked, really talked for the first time. Nahili told him about her mom, how Clara used to sing gospel while washing dishes, how she'd pawned her wedding ring to buy Nahili's first violin. Sam listened, his fingers tracing the rim of his glass, and when she paused, he spoke, his voice low, rough. Marjorie loved music too, he said. Not like yours, though. She was all about jazz, Coltrane, that kind of thing. Used to dance with Ellie in the kitchen, spinning her till she laughed. Nahili watched him, saw the way his shoulders slumped, the grief he carried like a second skin. "What happened?" she asked, softer than she meant. "Car crash," he said, staring into his beer. "Drunk driver. Ellie was 6. Marjorie. She didn't make it to the hospital." He swallowed. Hard. "I wasn't there. I was closing a deal in Denver. Biggest regret of my life." She didn't say anything, just reached across the table and touched his hand, her fingers brushing his knuckles. It wasn't pity, it was understanding. The kind that came from losing someone who was your whole world. He looked at her, surprised, and for a moment, they just sat there, the jukebox crooning about heartache. The music shifted, a slower song, and Sam stood, holding out his hand. "Dance with me." Nahili laughed, shaking her head. "You serious? I can barely walk straight, let alone dance. I don't care." His voice was firm, but his eyes were soft. "One dance. No one's watching." She hesitated, then took his hand, letting him pull her up. Her cane stayed behind, and she leaned into him, her bad leg wobbling. He held her steady, one arm around her waist, the other guiding her hand to his shoulder. They moved slowly, more swaying than dancing, the neon light painting their faces in shades of crimson. His hand was warm on her back, his breath grazing her temple, and she could smell the faint cedar of his cologne mixed with the beer on his lips. Her body pressed closer, her curves fitting against him, and she felt his pulse quicken, matching hers. "You're not half bad at this," she murmured, her cheek brushing his jaw. "You're full of surprises," he replied, his voice a low rumble. His hand slid lower, resting at the small of her back, and the air between them thickened, charged. She tilted her head, her lips inches from his, the memory of their last kiss sparking in her chest. The jukebox hummed, the notes wrapping around them like a spell. She pulled back just before their lips met, her breath shaky. "I can't, Sam," she said, stepping away, her hand lingering on his chest. "Not like this. Not when it's still a deal." He nodded, his eyes dark with something that wasn't just want, regret. Maybe. Or hope. I hear you, he said. But I'm not going anywhere. The next morning, trouble came knocking. Nahili was in the kitchen, pouring coffee. When the doorbell rang, Sam answered it, and she heard a voice she hadn't expected. Navo Jackson, her father, a man whose presence filled a room like a storm. She stepped into the living room, her cane tapping, and saw him standing there, 60 years old, broad-shouldered, his preacher's suit crisp despite the dust on his boots, his eyes, dark like hers, burned with anger. What the hell is this I hear about a contract? Navo's voice was low, controlled, but it carried the weight of a sermon. You're selling yourself to this rich prick. Nahili Sam bristled, stepping forward. Watch your mouth, old man. She's not selling anything. Nahili held up a hand, stopping Sam. Dad, it's not like that. I made a choice. I needed the money for Mom's bills. For me. Navo's jaw tightened, his hands clenching. A choice. You're shaming our family, our people, playing house with a man who'd buy you like livestock. I raised you better. You raised me to survive, she shot back, her voice steady despite the ache in her chest. And that's what I'm doing. You don't get to judge me. Sam stepped between them, his voice calm but firm. She's here because she chose to be, not because I forced her. You got a problem. Take it up with me. Navo's eyes flicked to Sam, sizing him up. You're a snake. Ward. I know you're kind white. Rich. Thinking you own the world. Stay away from my daughter. Enough. Nahili's voice cut through, sharp and final. Both of you. Stop. Dad. I love you. But this is my life. Sam. Back off. I don't need you fighting my battles. Navo stared at her, his anger softening into something sadder, disappointment, maybe, or fear. You're my girl. Nahili, he said quietly. Don't lose yourself to this. He turned and left, the door slamming behind him. Nahili stood there, her cane trembling in her hand, the weight of his words sinking in. Sam reached for her, but she shook her head. Don't, she said, her voice breaking. Just don't. That night, Nahili sat on the porch, her violin in her lap, the prairie stretching out like a sea of shadow. The stars were sharp, the air cold enough to sting. She didn't play, just ran her fingers over the strings, thinking of her mom, her dad, the girl she used to be. Sam's words from the bar echoed. You're an inferno, but so did Navo's. Don't lose yourself. Sam stepped outside, a mug of coffee in his hand. He didn't say anything, just sat on the steps beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. The silence wasn't heavy, not like before, it was soft, like they were sharing it. I got you something, he said finally, pulling a small box from his pocket. Inside was a violin string, high-end, the kind she'd never afford. Thought you might need it after tonight. She looked at him, surprised. Why? Because you're good, he said simply. And I want to hear you play again. She took the box, her fingers brushing his, and for the first time, she didn't pull away. Thanks, she said, her voice soft. But this doesn't mean I'm yours. He chuckled, leaning back. Wouldn't dream of it. They sat there, the wind whispering through the grass, and Nahili felt something shift, not trust. Not yet, but the start of something real. The morning sun spilled through the cabin's windows, painting the hardwood floors in stripes of gold. Nahili Jackson sat at the kitchen counter, her coffee gone cold, scrolling through her phone with a knot in her stomach. The press conference was today Sam's big moment to charm the media, spin his wholesome marriage story, and save his company from the environmental lawsuit. She was supposed to stand by his side, smile like a good wife, and pretend she didn't hate every second of it. Her cane leaned against the stool, a quiet reminder of the weight she carried, not just in her leg, but in her heart. Sam Ward was upstairs, probably practicing his speech in front of a mirror, perfecting that goddamn smirk that made people trust him. Since the fair, since that almost kiss in the dive bar, things had shifted between them. He wasn't just the arrogant millionaire anymore, not entirely. The violin string he'd given her, the way he'd listened when she talked about her mom, the way his eyes softened when he thought she wasn't looking at all, chipped away at her walls. But Nahili wasn't a fool. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, not when their marriage was still a contract, a lie built on money and desperation. Her phone buzzed. A notification from a local gossip blog. She clicked it, expecting some fluff piece about the press conference. Instead, her breath caught. The headline screamed in bold, "Millionaire buys a bride." Sam Ward's fake marriage exposed. Below it was a scanned copy of their contract. Every detail laid bare her debts. The studio, the one-year timeline. The article called her a gold digger, and Sam a manipulative bastard, complete with blurry photos of them at the gala. Her cane circled in red like evidence of her unworthiness. Nahili's hands shook, the phone slipping onto the counter. Her chest tightened, like the air had been sucked out of the room. The comments were worse, hundreds of them, tearing her apart. She's just in it for the money. Look at her. Who'd marry that for real? Sam must be desperate. She wanted to scream, to throw the phone against the wall, but all she could do was sit there, her scars physical and not feeling raw under the world's gaze. Sam's boots thudded down the stairs, his voice breaking the silence. "You ready? We need to leave in 10. He stopped, seeing her face. "What's wrong?" She shoved the phone toward him, her voice trembling with fury. "This, you son of a bitch! You leaked it! Didn't you?" He grabbed the phone, his eyes scanning the screen, his jaw clenched, a muscle ticking under his stubble. "Fuck," he muttered, scrolling faster. "This wasn't me. Nahili, I swear. Bullshit." She stood, her cane scraping the floor as she leaned forward. "You needed a way out. Didn't you? Make me the bad guy. Save your precious company. I'm done being your pawn. Sam." He slammed the phone down, his voice rising. "You think I'd do this? Tank my own deal? I'm losing everything here, investors. Contracts. My goddamn reputation." "Then who did?" she shouted, her eyes burning with tears she refused to let fall. "Who else knew? Sam, Miss Lahi, your PR team. Or did you just leave the contract lying around for some asshole to find?" He ran a hand through his hair, pacing like a caged animal. "I don't know." "Okay, but I didn't betray you. You have to believe me." Believe you. She laughed, sharp and bitter. I don't even know you. You're just a rich prick who thought he could buy a wife and a conscience. His face darkened, but he didn't snap back. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice low, almost pleading. You know me, Nahili. You've seen me, the real me, not the bullshit I sell to the world. That night at the bar, the way you played at the fair, I'm not playing you. Not anymore. She wanted to believe him, wanted it so bad it hurt. But the contract on that screen, the words gold digger and fake, were louder than his voice. She grabbed her cane and headed for the door, her leg aching with every step. I need space, she said, not looking back. Don't follow me. Dusty Creek was buzzing by noon, the scandal spreading like wildfire. Nahili walked into Dusty Brew, ignoring the stares from the regulars. Miss Lahi was behind the counter, her usual sass replaced by a frown. Oh, honey, she said, sliding a latte across the counter. You okay? No, Nahili admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. She sank into a booth, her cane propped beside her, and stared out the window at the dusty street. The coffee shop smelled of cinnamon and burnt grounds, the jukebox playing a low Patsy Cline tune. She felt exposed, like the whole town could see her shame, her debts, her desperation, her foolish hope that Sam might be more than a deal. Her phone kept buzzing texts from Ava, a voicemail from her dad. Navo, probably ready to say I told you so. She ignored them all, but one message caught her eye. From an unknown number. You're a disgrace to your people. Go back where you came from. Her stomach lurched, and she deleted it. But the words stuck, sharp as glass. The bell above the door jingled, and Sam walked in, his face haggard, like he hadn't slept in days. The regulars glanced up, then away, their whispers filling the air. He slid into the booth across from her, his hands clenched on the table. We need to talk, he said, voice low. There's nothing to say, she replied, not meeting his eyes. You got what you wanted, attention. Too bad it blew up in your face. Damn it. Nahili, I didn't do this. He leaned forward, his voice urgent. I've got my team looking into it. Someone hacked my office. Got the contract from my files. I'm not the enemy here. She finally looked at him, her eyes blazing. Then who is Sam? Because right now, I'm the one getting torn apart. They're calling me a whore, a sellout. Worse, you think your money can fix that? He flinched, like she'd slapped him. I'm trying to fix it. But I need you to trust me, just for a second. Trust you. She stood, her cane banging against the table. You bought me, Sam. You put a price on my life, and now the whole world knows it. I'm done. She started for the door, but he grabbed her arm, his grip firm but not rough. The coffee shop went quiet, every eye on them. Don't walk away, he said, his voice breaking. Not like this. I'm begging you. She pulled free, her heart pounding. You don't get to beg, she said, her voice cold. You don't get to act like this is real when it's all a fucking lie. The words hung between them, heavy as the silence that followed. She walked out, the bell jingling behind her, leaving Sam standing there, his hands empty, back at the cabin. Nahili locked herself in her room, the scandal replaying in her head like a bad song. She opened her violin case, but her hands shook too much to play. The contract was supposed to be her way out, a chance to pay her mom's debts and chase her dreams. Instead, it had stripped her bare, turned her into a punchline. She thought of Sam, his voice in the bar, his hand on her back when they danced, the way he'd looked at her when she played at the fair. Had any of it been real? Or was she just a fool for wanting it to be downstairs? Sam stood in the living room, a whiskey bottle in his hand, the fireplace cold and dark. The scandal had cost him a major investor, and the lawsuit was gaining traction. But none of that mattered as much as Nahili's words. You don't get to act like this is real. He'd fucked up, not by leaking the contract, he'd never do that, but by letting her think he could. He'd started to care about her, more than he'd cared about anyone since Marjorie and Ellie, and now she was slipping away. His phone rang. Jameson Cole, his rival, a slick developer who'd been gunning for Ward Properties for years. Tough break. Sam, Jameson said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. Guess your little marriage stunt didn't pan out. Better luck next time. Sam's grip tightened on the phone. You slimy bastard. You did this. Didn't you? Jameson laughed. Prove it. Oh, wait, you can't. See you in court. Ward. The call ended, and Sam threw the phone across the room, the crack of plastic echoing in the silence. He didn't have proof, but he knew Jameson was behind it. The question was, how to fight back, and how to convince Nahili he wasn't the enemy. Nahili didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window, the prairie dark and endless outside, her violin untouched. Her dad's voicemail played on loop in her head. Come home. Nahili, this ain't you. But home wasn't an option. Not when Navo saw her as a failure. Not when the town saw her as a fraud. She thought of Ava, who texted her a heart emoji and, "You're stronger than this shit." She wanted to believe it. But strength felt like a lie right now. The scandal wasn't just about her, it was about Sam, too. She'd seen the pain in his eyes when he talked about his family, the way he'd listened when she played. He wasn't the man she'd thought. Not entirely, but trust was a bridge she couldn't cross. Not when the world was screaming her shame. She packed a bag, just essentials, her violin, a few clothes, her mom's old scarf. She didn't know where she was going. But she couldn't stay here. Not with Sam's name tied to hers like a noose. She slipped out before dawn, leaving a note on the counter. I'm done. Don't look for me. Sam found the note at sunrise, the cabin too quiet without her. He read it, his chest tightening, and crumpled the paper in his fist. He'd lost Marjorie and Ellie to a drunk driver, lost his company to greed, and now he was losing Nahili to his own mistakes. But he wasn't the type to give up, not yet. He grabbed his keys and headed for Dusty Brew, hoping Miss Lahi might know where Nahili went. The town was awake, the gossip louder than ever, but Sam didn't care. He'd find her, not to save his company or his image, but because she was the only thing that felt real anymore. The Dusty Brew coffee shop was a ghost of itself at dusk, the neon open sign flickering like it was on its last legs. Inside, the air smelled of stale coffee and cinnamon, the jukebox silent for once. Nahili Jackson sat in a corner booth, her violin case on the table, her cane hooked over the seat. She'd been back in her old apartment for 3 days. a cramped studio that reeked of mildew and regret. But she couldn't stay away from the brew. It was the only place that still felt like hers, even after the scandal had turned her into Dusty Creek's favorite punching bag. Her phone was off, the battery dead from ignoring texts and calls, Ava's pep talks, Miss Lahey's worried check-ins, her dad's voicemails that started with, "I told you so," and ended with, "Come home." The gossip blog's headline still burned in her mind. Millionaire buys a bride. Every comment, every slur, had carved a new scar, deeper than the one on her leg. She'd left Sam's cabin to reclaim her life, but all she'd found was a town that saw her as a gold digger, a fraud, a nobody. She sipped her coffee, cold and bitter, and stared out the window at the darkening street. The prairie beyond was a shadow, the wind howling like it was mourning her mistakes. She'd thought running would free her, but it just left her hollow. Sam's face kept creeping into her head, his voice in the bar, rough with grief, his hand on her back when they danced, the way he'd begged her not to leave. She hated him for making her feel something, hated herself for wanting it to be real. The bell above the door jingled, and Nahili tensed, expecting Miss Lahey with another plate of unsolicited pie. Instead, it was Sam Ward, his Stetson gone, his face haggard like he hadn't slept since she left. His boots scuffed the floor, and the regulars, two old guys nursing beers, glanced up, then away. Their whispers, sharp as knives. Sam didn't care. His eyes locked on Nahili, and he crossed the room in 3 strides, sliding into the booth across from her. "You look like shit," she said, her voice flat, but her heart was pounding. "Feel like it too," he replied, his voice low, rough. "I've been looking for you." She leaned back, crossing her arms. "Told you not to." "What? Your company tanking so bad you need your fake wife back?" He winced, but didn't look away. "This isn't about the company. It's about you." "Bullshit." She grabbed her cane, ready to leave, but his hand shot out, catching hers. His touch was warm, firm, and it sent a jolt through her, memories of their last kiss angry, desperate flooding back. "Hear me out," he said, his eyes pleading. 5 minutes. Then you can walk away, and I won't follow." She pulled her hand free, but stayed, her jaw tight. "Clock's ticking. Ward." He took a deep breath, leaning forward. It was Jameson. He hacked my office, got the contract, leaked it to that blog. I've got proof emails, time stamps, the works. My team's sending it to the press tomorrow. He wanted to ruin me, and you got caught in the crossfire. I'm sorry. Nahili. I should have protected you." She stared at him, searching for the lie, but his eyes were steady, raw. "Why should I believe you?" she asked, her voice softer now, almost breaking. "You bought me. Sam, you put me in this mess." "I know." He ran a hand through his hair, his voice cracking. "I'm a selfish son of a bitch. I thought I could control everything, my company. My image? You. But you're not something I can control. You're the only thing that's felt real since I lost Marjorie and Ellie." Her chest tightened, his words hitting harder than she expected. She thought of the fair, the way he'd watched her play, the violin string he'd given her, Real, she said, her voice trembling. You call this real? The whole town thinks I'm a whore. Sam, my dad thinks I've betrayed him. I've got nothing left. You've got me, he said, and the simplicity of it, the way his voice broke, made her pause. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm asking you to give me a chance to make this right. Not for the contract, not for the press, for us. She laughed, sharp and bitter, but tears stung her eyes. There is no us, Sam. There never was. Then why does it hurt so damn much? He leaned closer, his hands clenching on the table. I see you, Nahili. Not the cane, not the contract, not the bullshit the world throws at you. I see the woman who played that violin like she was pouring her soul out, who stood up to me, to your dad, to everyone. I'm in love with you, and I'm begging you to stay. The words hung there, heavy, like the air before a storm. Nahili's breath caught, her heart a mess of anger and hope. She wanted to hate him, wanted to walk away. But his eyes, those damn eyes, held her, raw and honest in a way she'd never seen before. Before she could speak. The bell jingled again, and Ava burst in, her pink hair glowing under the lights. Nahili, you okay? I saw his truck outside and... She stopped, eyeing Sam. What's this asshole doing here? It's fine. Ava, Nahili said, her voice steady despite the chaos in her chest. Give us a minute. Ava raised an eyebrow but backed off, muttering, You hurt her. Ward, I'll tattoo your ass with a cactus. She grabbed a coffee and sat at the counter, watching like a hawk. Nahili turned back to Sam, her hands trembling. You don't get it, she said quietly. I'm not your redemption story. I'm not here to fix you. I don't want you to fix me, he said. I want you to be with me. No contract, no lies, just you and me. She closed her eyes, the weight of his words sinking in. The coffee shop was quiet, the only sound the hum of the neon sign and the faint creak of the booth. She thought of her mom, who'd told her to fight for what mattered, of her dad, who'd never understand, of the music that had carried her through the worst days. And she thought of Sam, not the millionaire, but the man who'd danced with her, who'd begged her to stay. Okay, she said finally, her voice barely audible, but this is on my terms. No more games. His face softened, a smile breaking through. No games. I swear. He reached for her hand, and this time, she let him take it. His fingers were warm, calloused, grounding. They stood, and he pulled her into his arms, right there in the middle of the brew. The regulars stared. Ava grinned, and Nahili didn't care. His lips found hers, soft at first, then deeper, a kiss that tasted of coffee and second chances. The neon light bathed them in green, the hum of the sign mixing with their breaths, her cane forgotten against the booth. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheek, and for the first time, she felt like she was home. The next step was Navo. Nahili knew she couldn't move forward with Sam, not fully, until she faced her father. The church was on the edge of town, a white clapboard building with a steeple that leaned slightly in the wind. The stained glass windows glowed in the morning light, casting patches of red and blue on the gravel lot. Nahili's cane sank into the dirt as she walked. Sam at her side, his presence steady, but not overbearing. Navo was inside, arranging hymnals, his suit as crisp as ever. He looked up when they entered, his face hardening at the sight of Sam. "You've got some nerve," he said, his voice low, like thunder rolling in. "Both of you. Dad, please," Nahili said, stepping forward. "I need you to listen." Navo's eyes flicked to her, softening just a fraction. "I'm listening, girl. But I don't trust him." He jabbed a finger at Sam. "He's a snake, Nahili. He'll use you up and spit you out." Sam didn't flinch. "I deserve that," he said, his voice calm. "I fucked up. Sir, I put Nahili in a bad spot, and I'll spend my life making it right. But I love her, not because of some contract, but because she's the strongest person I've ever met." Navo's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. Nahili took a breath, her cane steadying her. "Dad, I know you think I'm betraying you, our people. But I'm not. I'm choosing my life, same as Mom did when she left her family to marry you. Sam's not perfect, hell. He's a mess, but he sees me, and I love him too." The words felt like a release, like a note she'd been holding too long. Navo stared at her, his eyes searching, and for a moment, she thought he'd turn away. Then he stepped forward, his hand resting on her shoulder, heavy but warm. "You're my girl," he said, his voice thick. "Always will be. If this is what you want, I won't stand in your way." He looked at Sam, his gaze hard but not cruel. "You hurt her, Ward, and no amount of money will save you." "Understood," Sam said, nodding. Navo touched Nahili's forehead, a gesture from her childhood, then turned back to his hymnals. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was enough. Outside, the prairie was alive with morning light, the grass swaying like a song. Nahili and Sam walked to his truck, her cane tapping a rhythm against the gravel. "That went better than I thought," she said, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Told you I'm charming," Sam replied, but his grin was soft, not smug. He opened the truck door for her, his hand brushing hers, and the touch sent a spark through her, quiet but real. They drove back to the cabin, the radio playing a low country tune, the windows down to let the wind in. Nahili felt lighter, like she'd shed a weight she hadn't known she was carrying. The scandal wasn't gone. The town still whispered. The press still circled, but it didn't own her anymore. She glanced at Sam, his profile sharp against the morning light, and realized she wasn't just fighting for herself now. She was fighting for them. That night, they sat in the living room, the fireplace crackling, the air warm with the scent of cedar. Nahili had her violin out, not playing, just holding it, her fingers tracing the worn wood. Sam sat across from her, a beer in his hand, his eyes on her like she was the only thing in the world. "We need a plan," she said, breaking the silence. "The press conference is off, but the story's still out there. What's next tomorrow?" My team's releasing the proof about Jameson. He said, "It'll clear your name. Take the heat off." But I want more than that. I want to do something real, maybe fund a music program for the town. Give kids like you a shot. She raised an eyebrow. You trying to buy my approval now? He laughed, leaning forward. Nah, just trying to be the man you deserve. She set the violin down, standing, her cane steady. You're getting there, she said, and closed the distance between them. She sat on the arm of his chair, her hand resting on his shoulder, feeling the warmth of him through his shirt. But you've got a long way to go. He looked up at her, his hand sliding to her waist, gentle but sure. I'm all in. Nahili, you know that. She leaned down, her lips brushing his. Not a kiss yet, just a promise. Good, she whispered, because I'm not easy to keep up with. They stayed like that, the firelight dancing across their faces, the world outside fading away. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. The old theater in Dusty Creek wasn't much to look at peeling paint. Creaky seats, a stage that sagged in the middle, but tonight, it glowed like a jewel under strings of white lights draped across the rafters. The air smelled of popcorn and pine, a strange mix that felt like home. Nahili Jackson stood backstage, her violin tucked under her arm, her cane propped against a crate. Her hair was braided down her back, and she wore a simple blue dress, not the gala kind, but one she'd picked herself. Soft cotton that moved with her. The crowd was small, maybe 200 locals, but their chatter filled the space. A hum of anticipation that made her pulse race. This wasn't just another gig. This was her concert, her chance to take back her story after the scandal that had torn her apart. The blog post, the contract, the ugly words, gold digger, sellout, whore still lingered. But they didn't own her anymore. She'd chosen to stay with Sam Ward, not because of his money or his promises, but because he'd seen her, scars and all, and loved her anyway. Tonight, she'd play for herself, for her mom, for the town that was finally starting to listen. Sam was in the wings, out of sight, but close enough that she could feel him, his presence steady like the prairie wind. He'd been different since the coffee shop, since he'd begged her to stay. No more smirks, no more control. He'd spent the week working with his team to expose Jameson's hack, clearing Nahili's name in the press, but more than that, he'd listened. When she said she wanted to organize this concert, he didn't offer to pay for it, just asked how he could help. It was small, but it was everything. The MC, a local radio DJ with a voice like gravel, took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Nahili Jackson. The crowd clapped, louder than at the fair, some whistling, a few shouting her name. Nahili took a breath, her cane tapping as she walked out, the spotlight warm on her face. She didn't flinch under their eyes. Not anymore. She raised her violin, the wood smooth against her chin, and began to play. The music was new, a piece she'd written in the quiet nights after leaving Sam's cabin, when she thought she'd lost everything. It started soft, a single note like a heartbeat, then built, weaving a story of pain and hope, of a girl who'd been broken but never beaten. The notes soared, filling the theater, spilling out into the prairie night. The crowd was silent, caught in the spell. And Nahili poured herself into it, her mom's laughter, her dad's prayers, Sam's hand in hers. When the final note faded, lingering like a star, the room erupted, applause shaking the old walls. She opened her eyes, blinking against the light, and saw Ava in the front row, screaming like a rock star fan. Miss Lahi was there too, clapping with a grin that said, "Told you so." Even her dad, Navo, sat near the back, his face unreadable, but his hands moving, slow and steady. Nahili's chest swelled, not just with pride, but with something bigger freedom. Maybe. Or just the knowledge that she was enough. She glanced at Sam in the wings, his silhouette sharp against the curtain. He wasn't clapping, but his eyes were on her, soft and fierce, like she was the only thing in the world. She smiled, small, but real, and he nodded. A silent, "You did it." After the concert, the theater emptied, but Nahili stayed, helping Ava pack up the sound equipment. The stage was littered with confetti, the air still humming with the night's energy. Sam lingered nearby, rolling up cables, his flannel shirt sleeves pushed to his elbows. Ava caught Nahili's eye and smirked. "Your boy's not half bad when he's not being a prick," she said, loud enough for Sam to hear. "Watch it. Pink hair." Sam shot back, but he was grinning, the kind of grin that made Nahili's stomach flip. Ava laughed, slinging a bag over her shoulder. "I'm out. Don't do anything I wouldn't do." She winked and left, the door banging shut behind her. Nahili and Sam were alone now, the theater quiet, except for the faint creak of the rafters. She leaned her cane against the stage, her leg aching, but her heart full. "You didn't have to stay," she said, turning to him. "I know you've got a company to save." "Screw the company," he said, stepping closer. Stepping. The stage lights were off, but the white bulbs above cast a soft glow, catching the stubble on his jaw. "Tonight was about you. Always will be." She raised an eyebrow, but her smile betrayed her. "Getting sappy on me. Ward. Maybe." He stopped a foot away, his hands in his pockets, like he was giving her space to decide. "You were incredible up there. Made me feel like I was hearing you for the first time." Her throat tightened, his words hitting deeper than she expected. She stepped forward, closing the gap, her fingers brushing his arm. "You're not so bad yourself," she said, her voice soft. "When you're not being a smug bastard." He chuckled, low and warm, and his hand found her waist, gentle but sure. "I'm working on it," he said, his eyes searching hers. "For you." She didn't pull away, didn't want to. The air between them was warm, charged, the scent of his cedar cologne mixing with the faint sweetness of her perfume. She tilted her head, her lips inches from his, and whispered, "Show me." He didn't need more. His lips met hers, slow at first, like he was savoring every second. The kiss deepened, soft, but hungry, his hand sliding to the small of her back, pulling her closer, her fingers curled into his shirt, feeling the heat of him through the fabric, the steady thump of his heart. The bulbs above hummed, their light weaving a cocoon around them, the creak of the stage fading into the rhythm of their breaths. His thumb brushed her hip, tracing the curve, and she leaned into him, her bad leg forgotten, her body alive with want. They pulled back, breathless, foreheads touching. "You're my home." "Nahili," he murmured, his voice rough with emotion. "I don't deserve you, but I'm all in." She smiled, her hand cupping his face, feeling the scrape of stubble under her palm. "You're getting there," she said, and kissed him again. Lighter this time, a promise. Later. They drove back to the cabin, the prairie dark and endless under a sky spilled with stars. The radio was off. The only sound, the hum of the truck and the wind through the open windows. Nahili's violin case sat between them, a quiet witness to the night. Sam's hand rested on her knee, not possessive, but present, and she didn't move it. At the cabin, the fire was low, casting a warm glow across the living room. Nahili kicked off her shoes, her cane leaning against the wall, and sank onto the couch. Sam joined her, a beer in one hand, but his eyes were on her, soft and steady. "You thinking about the concert?" he asked, his voice low. "Thinking about a lot of things," she said, her fingers tracing the edge of her dress. "Mom, Dad, you, how I got here." He set the beer down, leaning closer. "Regrets." She shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "Not anymore. You only that I didn't meet you sooner," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made her heart ache. She moved before she could think, straddling his lap, her hands on his shoulders. The firelight danced across his face, catching the lines of grief and hope etched there. His hands found her hips, steadying her, and she felt the warmth of him, the strength under his shirt. "Your trouble, Sam Ward," she murmured, her lips brushing his ear, the scent of cedar and smoke filling her senses. "Only the best kind," he replied, his voice a rumble. He kissed her neck, slow and deliberate, his lips tracing a path that sent shivers down her spine. Her fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, and she arched into him, the fire's heat nothing compared to the one building inside her. His hands slid up her back, fingers splaying across her skin, and she gasped, the sound swallowed by the crackle of the flames. The room was a blur of light and shadow, the world narrowing to the feel of his breath, the taste of his skin, the way their bodies fit like they'd been made for this. They didn't rush, didn't need to. Every touch was a conversation, every kiss a vow. When they finally pulled apart, breathless and tangled, Nahili rested her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. "This is real," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "Damn right it is," he said, his arm tightening around her. "You're stuck with me now." She laughed, soft and free, and for the first time in years, she felt whole. The days that followed were quieter, but not empty. Sam made good on his promise, funding a music program at the community center, named after Nahili's mom, Clara. It wasn't a grand gesture, just a few rooms with instruments and teachers, but it was enough to give kids a chance Nahili never had. The town didn't change overnight, but it bent. Miss Lahi started stocking Nahili's favorite coffee beans, and a kid from the trailer park asked her to teach him violin. Even Navo came around, showing up at the cabin one Sunday with a pot of his famous gumbo, his way of saying he was trying. Nahili and Sam built a rhythm, not perfect, but theirs. They fought sometimes about money, about his stubbornness, about her pride, but they always found their way back. She kept playing, her music a thread that tied her to her mom, to Sam, to herself. He sold one of his resorts, using the money to settle the lawsuit and rebuild trust, not just with the town, but with himself. One evening, they stood on the porch, the prairie glowing under a honey-gold sunset. Nahili's cane was inside. She didn't need it tonight, not with Sam's arm around her. The wind carried the scent of sage, and the stars were just beginning to peek through. "You ever think about forever?" she asked, her voice soft. He looked at her, his eyes warm. "Every damn day. But I'm good with right now, as long as it's with you." She leaned into him, her head on his shoulder. "Works for me." They stayed there, two people who'd walked through storms and found each other, not by chance, but by choice. The prairie stretched out before them, vast and unbroken, a reminder that some things endured not because they were easy, but because they were worth fighting for. That's the end of Sam and Nahili's epic love story. Loved it? Subscribe for more heart-pounding tales. And drop a comment. Would you fight for a love like theirs? Catch you next time.